The Green Knight has been one of my highly anticipated films since I saw the trailer sometime last year. I am so happy that it has finally made it to theaters. So how was it? The Green Knight is a retelling of the story of Sir Gawain, King Arthur's reckless and headstrong nephew who embarks on a daring quest to confront the eponymous Green Knight, a gigantic emerald-skinned stranger and tester of men. Gawain embarks on a deep journey to define his character and prove his worth in the eyes of his family and kingdom by facing the ultimate challenger. So the reason I said Gawain is because that's how Sean Harris's King Arthur pronounced it. Maybe that's the right way, maybe not, but I'm going to stick with it just to make it easier on my mouth as I try to talk. This is also going to be spoiler-free. While the movie isn't a mystery, there are portions that I think are better if you experience them for yourself. So I'm going to do my best to be descriptively vague as necessary. This is a beautiful movie to look at, and the cinematography is simply stunning. The entire film has a dreamlike appearance to it. There's a misty texture to just about everything, and that's coupled with a softer focus to a lot of the settings. Now, the subjects are still totally in focus, it's just the surrounding landscapes are made to be more ethereal. There are some great uses of long continuous takes, and because there's not always a lot of dialogue happening in the movie, it does make it easier to shoot. We watch Gawain ride his horse really slowly but steadily down this road as he leaves the castle, and then the camera just follows him for probably close to like 2 minutes. It's patient and it works to put us on the path with him. There's another moment where Gawain is traveling through the remains of a battlefield, and he comes across a young man who engages him in conversation. The camera is at a distance from the actors to give us the scope of the landscape and also allow for us to view the full physical interaction between the two. The colors in this are mainly muted and drab, but at times there are bright displays of color. Gawain's cloak is a goldenrod that really stands out as he travels. A young woman he comes in contact with has just strikingly red hair. And there's a lady of a manor who dresses in a vibrant blue gown. And then when the blood is shown, it's deeply red and contrasts against the drab background. I loved the soundtrack and score in this also. There's an older, even churchy feel to some of it as we hear choral singers providing music that feels right at home with the medieval setting. And the acting in this is top-notch also. Dev Patel stars as Gawain, and he brings a ton of emotion to his flawed character. We get to see hubris, uncertainty, courage, fear, desire, longing, and insignificance in his eyes. And I think what's most impressive is that there isn't a lot of dialogue, so the majority of what we experience comes from what he can emote. Sean Harris as the aging King Arthur is wonderful to watch. It also helps that I just absolutely love his voice. There is power that he brings to the now frail character, and I love the restraint that he shows as he delivers his lines. Alicia Vikander plays 2 different roles, and each are powerful in their own right. One character is loving and determined, while the other is cunning and mysterious. Now I like how each of them brings sort of a test to Gawain. One of her characters is quite plain and the other is lavish, and she executes each really well, giving them similarities while also being able to keep them unique. Joel Edgerton as the Lord is kind of mysterious, and certainly he's a little odd. It's almost like he speaks in riddles, but he isn't. There was an air of mystery as Gawain encounters him, but the connection and meaning in the story is wonderful, and then Edgerton plays the part really well. And there's a moment as they sit in a room and the exchange of dialogue, it's just pointed, weighty, and it's really telling when it comes to Gawain and his inner character. Ralph Ineson is the Green Knight, and while he's not on screen a ton, his voice is fantastic. And the way he commands the screen in those moments that he's there, it's just wonderful. And with the Green Knight, and I think most, if not all, of what we see of him are practical effects. I mean, it's easy to see that there are human eyes underneath that tree-like exterior. And that's not a knock. I think the human element makes him an even greater character, especially as we see him interact with Gawain. There is something mystical about the knight too, but I think in order for some of his actions to be more weighty and meaningful, there also has to be some tie to man. Now there are some other practical effects that are utilized, and each time they do look really convincing. There's even a point where CGI is used to create this fox that it kind of just tags along with Gawain as he travels. And while a lot of the time the fox is at a distance from us, there are a couple of moments where we get to see it up close, and I was doing my hardest to just try and find flaws in it, and I couldn't. I mean, the fox looked amazing and had a very convincing realness to it. So you're probably thinking, okay, the acting is good, the cinematography is beautiful, and the score is moving, but why the heck haven't you talked about the story? Is that really just the bummer part of this entire movie? No, the story is simply fantastic. Towards the very beginning of the film, Arthur asks Gawain to tell him a tale to know him better. The problem is, Gawain hasn't done anything to tell. What we are then taken on is this epic journey worthy of retelling. And there are several small adventures Gawain experiences on his way to visit the Green Knight in the Green Chapel. Each one relates to a trait or a characteristic, and sometimes these reflect how Gawain sees himself or feels. Other times they're challenges or experiences meant to draw out traits. And there is a real beauty to this journey that we watch. I found it highly engaging, especially because there wasn't a lot of dialogue. The visuals tell the story and are helped along with the emotive performance by Patel. Now, I do think that the slowness of this story is going to turn some off. It's a patient tale at 2 hours and 5 minutes, and when you combine that with the lack of dialogue, it can feel slow if you're not connecting with the narrative. And I think you really have to pay attention, especially in the times where there is dialogue, because it gives clues to what is to come and it provides context for feelings and events. And this doesn't spoon feed us as an audience, but I don't think it tries to hide the story either. This isn't an elitist art house snob film. It has the aesthetics of one, and it does require some thinking while watching it, but you don't have to have a degree in medieval literature to get the meaning. I really enjoyed the growth that we watch in Gawain. He's quite flawed, but he has the desire to be better. He chases after honor, and he has to fight to attain it. And there's a redemptive quality to the story as well, and I think the movie does an effective job in presenting it, but it's going to require focus and attention. So overall, The Green Knight is an engaging and beautiful epic with a story that is very moving and wonderfully told. The acting is phenomenal, especially considering the small amount of dialogue, and when combined with the sweeping landscapes and moving score, this creates an emotional and resonant narrative that is both condemning and inspiring. And even though the story is slower in its telling, and we as an audience will need to put in a little effort to fully understand, the reward for doing so is well worth it. There is sex, brief nudity, no profanity, and some brutal violence. I give The Green Knight 4.5 out of 5 couches. Have you been looking forward to seeing this? I'd love to know what you thought of the film in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.